My name is Amanda Kirby, 28 years old. At a crowded family dinner in a Kansas City steakhouse, I froze as my dad leaned across the table, his voice cutting through the noise around us. "You're just an extra, Amanda. Only your brother is worthy of pride." My mom nodded, her smile sharp, agreeing without a second thought. The words landed like a punch, but I'd spent my whole life hearing different versions of them. My fork hovered midair, my heart pounding. Everyone went silent, eyes fixed on me. My brothers smirked, basking in the spotlight as always. They expected me to shrink back to stay quiet like I had for years. But this time, something inside me snapped. I set my fork down, locked eyes with my dad, and said, "Fine. Just wait and see." Then I walked out, leaving behind their stunned faces. That night, I made a decision not just to prove them wrong, but to make them beg me to come back and help. So what do you think? Should I forgive my parents? Or let them face the consequences on their own? Leave your thoughts in the comments below. I really want to hear what you have to say. I grew up knowing my family's world revolved around my brother. I watched my parents' eyes light up when he stumbled through a school play, clapping like he'd just starred on Broadway, while my straight-A report cards barely earned a glance. Once I brought home a math award I had worked on for weeks. Dad skimmed it, muttered, "Good job, sweetheart," and turned to admire my brother's messy finger painting. Mom hung it on the fridge, calling it a masterpiece, inviting neighbors to see it. I stood there, my certificate crumpling in my hands, feeling invisible. Birthdays weren't any better. Mine meant socks, a notebook, or a few dollars in an envelope, while his were full of balloons, custom cakes, and expensive gifts. When I asked why, Mom would just say, "He's special, Amanda. Don't be selfish." I swallowed the sting, hoping one day they'd finally see me. At 14, I earned a full scholarship to a prestigious high school. My parents barely nodded, too distracted by my brother's mediocre grades. They even threw him a pizza party for trying hard. I sat in silence while everyone gushed over his potential. My trophies from debate and academics collected dust in my room. At 15, I won a coding competition presenting an app I had built from scratch. The prize was a plaque and a small gift card. I brought it home, heart racing. Mom glanced at it and said, "That's nice," before turning to my brother's new idea for a coffee shop he'd scribbled on a napkin. They gave him money to start planning. He spent it on sneakers. My plaque went into a drawer. The pattern never changed. I got a part-time job, saved every penny, and bought a used laptop to teach myself to code at night while my brother partied. My best friend would come over, watch me type, and whisper, "You're building something real, Amanda. They'll regret ignoring you." Every overlooked success, every dismissed effort carved a truth into me. My family had chosen their star, and it wasn't me. But their blindness gave me clarity. I didn't need their applause to keep going. I just needed to outwork everyone else. That's when I started planning for something bigger. I decided to take control of my future. My part-time job at the bookstore became my lifeline. I stacked shelves after school, saving every dollar in a secret account my parents didn't know about. While my brother was handed cash for his latest whim, a food truck that never left the driveway, I bought a used laptop with my own money. Late at night, the glow of the screen was my only companion as I taught myself to code from free online tutorials. HTML, CSS, Python. I absorbed it all, building small websites for practice, then for local businesses who paid me modest fees. My parents barely noticed. Mom would pass by my room and say, "Don't strain your eyes, Amanda." Dad grunted, too busy wiring money for my brother's next big thing, a boutique or a coffee shop that collapsed within weeks. I stopped expecting their praise. Their indifference fueled me. I'd code until the early hours, fueled by instant coffee and a stubborn belief that I could do this on my own. Soon, I began freelancing. My first project was designing a website for a local bakery, earning a few $100s after weeks of revisions. I kept it to myself. My parents were too busy celebrating another one of my brother's doomed ventures. My best friend would swing by after her shifts bringing leftover fries and grinning at my work. "You're a machine, Amanda. They have no idea what they're overlooking." By the time high school ended, I earned a partial scholarship to a university with a strong tech program. It wasn't enough, and my parents refused to help. They were pouring money into my brother's newest scheme. So I doubled down, taking on clients through online platforms, e-commerce sites, buggy apps, booking systems for salons. Every dollar went into tuition books, and eventually a better laptop. I worked from the library with earbuds and shutting out the world. My grades stayed high, my portfolio grew, and my bank account slowly climbed. Moving into my dorm, I carried everything in just a couple of bags. My parents didn't show they were at a trade show hyping my brother's revolutionary clothing line that collapsed before launch. I didn't care. I was free, finally living on my own terms. My best friend helped me unpack, joking about my tiny fridge. "You're gonna run the world from this closet." Her faith kept me going. College was tough, but I thrived. I joined coding clubs, took extra computer science courses, and kept freelancing to cover expenses. Clients ranged from startups to mom-and-pop shops, all trusting me with apps and websites. One big project, a mobile app for a gym chain, took months of late nights, but earned me $8,000. I reinvested it into software and a decent chair for my cramped apartment. My best friend and I celebrated with cheap pizza and soda, laughing about how far I'd come. My parents never knew. They were too busy bailing my brother out of yet another flop. Every late night, every line of code, every client email pushed me forward. My family's dismissal didn't stop me, it made me hungrier. I wasn't just building apps, I was building my way out. And that hunger carried me to the next chapter. At 25, I stood on the cusp of something big. I'd been invited to a tech conference in Kansas City to receive an award for an app I'd built, a fitness tracker that caught the eye of local startups. Months of late nights refining code and pitching to judges had led to this moment. I'd sent my parents an invitation, even booked them a spot at the gala. I didn't expect them to come, but a small part of me hoped they'd show up, see me on stage, and finally acknowledge my work. I spent weeks preparing my speech, practicing in front of my mirror, heart racing at the thought of holding that award. The night of the conference, I stood backstage in a rented dress, clutching my note cards. The auditorium buzzed with hundreds of attendees, tech founders, investors, professors. My best friend sat in the front row, her thumbs up, steadying my nerves. As my name was called, I walked to the podium, the spotlight warm on my face. "Amanda Kirby for outstanding innovation," the host announced. I gripped the sleek glass trophy, my voice steady, as I thanked my mentors and clients. The crowd clapped, some standing. I scanned the seats for Mom and Dad. Empty. My stomach twisted, but I forced a smile, delivering my speech without a hitch. Afterward, I joined my best friend at our table. She squeezed my hand, whispering, "You were incredible, Amanda." I nodded, but the absence of my family gnawed at me. I checked my phone, no texts, no missed calls. Later, I called Mom, hoping for an explanation. She picked up, her voice distracted. "Oh, Amanda, we meant to come, but your brother threw a barbecue at his place. You know how he loves hosting. We couldn't miss it." I heard laughter and music in the background, the clink of glasses. Dad chimed in. "It's a big deal for him, sweetheart. You understand?" I didn't. I hung up, my hands shaking. The next day, my best friend dragged me to a coffee shop to talk. I told her about the call, how my parents chose my brother's backyard party over my moment. She leaned forward, her eyes fierce. "Amanda, they don't get to define you. You built that app. You earned that award. They're missing out, not you." Her words hit hard. I'd spent years chasing their approval, molding myself to fit their expectations, only to be sidelined for a barbecue. My brother hadn't even launched anything new, just threw a party with their money. I pictured them grilling burgers, toasting his charisma, while I stood alone on that stage. I went home and replayed the night in my head. The applause, the weight of the trophy, the empty seats where my parents should have been. I thought about every time I'd pushed forward coding at midnight, juggling client deadlines, paying my own way through college. All while my brother coasted on their support, his half-baked ideas collapsing one after another. A clothing line that never shipped, a pop-up cafe that lasted a weekend, yet they celebrated him like a visionary. I'd been fighting for scraps of their attention, but for what? To be called an extra at a family party, to be skipped for a barbecue. My best friend's voice echoed, "You don't need them." She was right. I'd built this life, my skills, my clients, my award without their help. I didn't need their applause to keep going. Sitting on my couch, staring at the trophy on my coffee table, I felt a shift. I wasn't coding for them anymore. I wasn't living for their approval. I was doing this for me. My parents could keep their blind devotion to my brother. I'd keep building, not to prove them wrong, but to prove myself right. That realization became my new foundation. I moved into a small house on the edge of Kansas City, a place I'd saved for with every freelance paycheck. It wasn't fancy, but it was mine: hardwood floors, a tiny porch, and a spare room I turned into a home office. I hung up framed prints from local artists, set up a coffee maker, and bought a couch that didn't scream college dorm. My best friend helped me move hauling boxes and joking about my adulting glow-up. We spent the first night eating takeout on the floor, laughing until we couldn't breathe. For the first time, I felt like I belonged somewhere. My days filled with new rhythms. I'd wake early, answer emails from startup clients, and tweak code for my fitness app, which was gaining traction with gyms across the state. But work wasn't my whole life anymore. I joined a book club, went hiking with coworkers on weekends, and started cooking badly at first, but I got better. My best friend would swing by teasing my burnt pancakes, but staying for hours to talk about everything and nothing. I built a circle of people who saw me not as an extra, but as Amanda Sharp, driven and enough. My parents didn't know about the house. I didn't tell them. The last time we spoke, Mom called to gush about my brother's latest business venture, a custom hat line that was already losing money. "He's so creative," she said, as if I'd asked. I didn't mention my app's new partnership with a fitness chain or the house I'd bought. Why bother? They'd never cared before. Dad texted once asking if I was still doing that computer stuff. I didn't reply. Their world was my brother's, not mine. One weekend, my best friend and I hosted a game night at my place. My coworkers came bringing board games and cheap wine. We laughed over bad dice rolls and argued about rules until midnight. One of them, a designer named Sarah, pulled me aside. "You've got this whole life figured out, Amanda," she said. I shook my head, but her words stuck. I wasn't chasing my family's approval anymore. I was building a life that felt full, friends who showed up, work that challenged me, a home that was mine. My startup kept growing, but I didn't let it define me. I hired 2 developers to handle the app's updates, freeing me to focus on strategy and new ideas. We pitched to investors, landed a small funding round, and planned to expand the app to new markets. I loved the work, but I loved my freedom more, choosing my hours, my priorities, my people. My best friend noticed the change. "You're different, Amanda," she said one night over coffee. "Lighter. Like you're finally you." I smiled, knowing she was right. A month later, Mom called out of the blue. I braced myself for another monologue about my brother. Instead, she asked what I was doing. I mentioned the house, keeping it vague. Her response was a dismissive hum. "So you're just working an office job," she said. I almost laughed. My startup was on track to clear 6 figures that year, but to her, I was pushing papers. Dad jumped in, saying, "Your brother's got a real vision. You should see his new designs." I hung up, their words bouncing off me. They didn't know me, and I was done caring. I started saying no to their calls, letting them go to voicemail. My brother sent a text once asking for a loan to tide him over. I ignored it. My life wasn't theirs to claim anymore. I went to concerts with my book club friends, took a pottery class on a whim, and planned a road trip with my best friend to see the Ozarks. Every choice was mine, every moment deliberate. I wasn't proving anything to my family, I was living for the person I'd become. My house became my sanctuary, a space where I could breathe. I'd sit on my porch at night, sipping tea, listening to crickets. My best friend would join me sometimes, and we'd talk about dreams, hers to open a cafe, mine to keep building a life that felt true. I'd done it. Not for them, but for me. That freedom changed everything. My life had finally found its rhythm, but my family's world was beginning to crack. One evening, my phone lit up with Mom's name. I ignored it, assuming it was another monologue about my brother's genius. But then it buzzed again. And again. By the 15th call, I sighed and picked up. Her voice was frantic, not the usual proud chirp. "Amanda, we're in trouble," she said, words tumbling out. Their savings were gone, sunk into my brother's latest flop, a high-end clothing store that collapsed under bad loans and worse decisions. They'd taken out a second mortgage to fund it, certain he'd strike gold. Now they were broke, facing foreclosure. "We need your help," she pleaded, her tone sharp with desperation. I sat on my couch, stunned. For years, they'd bankrolled my brother's failures, coffee shops, sneaker brands, pop-up cafes, while dismissing my work. Now they were calling me. I asked what happened. Mom admitted they'd poured everything into the store, ignoring warnings from their accountant. My brother had promised a fashion empire, but his cheap designs didn't sell and creditors were circling. Dad got on the line, his voice shaky. "We saw you on TV, Amanda. That startup of yours? It's big now, isn't it? Maybe you could help us out." I froze. They'd seen my interview on a local news channel talking about my fitness app's expansion. They hadn't called to congratulate me. They called because they were desperate. I hung up, my mind spinning. My best friend came over that night, sensing my mood. I told her about the calls, the foreclosure, their sudden interest after years of silence. She leaned back, sipping her tea. "They only want you now because they're out of options," she said. "Think hard before you do anything, Amanda." Her words were steady, but I could see her worry. She knew how deep their neglect had cut me. I paced my living room, memories flooding back, Dad calling me an extra at that steakhouse party, Mom choosing my brother's barbecue over my award ceremony. Every ignored achievement, every dismissed effort played like a loop in my head. The next day, Dad texted, "Amanda, we're family. You can't turn your back on us. Your brother needs a fresh start." I stared at the message, my jaw tight. They weren't asking for me. They were asking for my money, for my success they'd never cared about. I thought about my childhood, carrying report cards home to blank stares. My college years, scraping by while they funded my brother's flops. The night I stood on that stage holding a trophy with empty seats where they should have been. They'd chosen him every time, and now they wanted me to save them. I called my best friend, needing her clarity. We met at a park, walking as I poured out my anger. "They think I owe them," I said, kicking a pebble. "After everything they think, I'll just write a check." She stopped, looking me in the eye. "You built your life without them, Amanda. You don't owe them anything. But this is your call. Make it for you, not them." Her words grounded me. I'd spent years proving myself not to them, but to myself. I'd built a house, a startup, a life, all on my own. Their crisis wasn't my burden. Mom called again that night, her voice breaking. "Amanda, we're losing the house. Please talk to us." I listened, my heart heavy but resolute. I remembered every slight, every moment they'd overlooked me. The barbecue they chose over my award. The years they called my work computer stuff while praising my brother's failures. I told her I needed time. She kept talking, begging, but I hung up, my hands steady. I wasn't their lifeline. I was mine. My best friend was right, they only saw me now because they had no one else. But their regret came too late. I'd moved on, built a life that didn't need their approval. Their crisis was their own, and I wasn't going to carry it. That clarity set the stage for what came next. I faced my family one last time at a diner in Kansas City, a place I hadn't stepped into in years. I agreed to meet curious but guarded. My startup was thriving, my fitness app now used by thousands, and I'd just bought a sleek new car, a reward for years of grinding. I pulled into the diner's lot, my heart steady but heavy. Inside, Mom, Dad, and my brother sat in a booth looking worn. Their faces lit up when they saw me, but not with pride, with hope for a lifeline. Mom started, her voice soft but urgent. "Amanda, we're in a bad spot. The bank took the house. Your brother has an idea, a new tech store. It's a sure thing. We just need an investor." Dad nodded, leaning forward. "You're doing well, Amanda. You could help us start over." My brother chimed in, his grin forced. "It's a big opportunity. I just need a little capital." I sipped my coffee, letting their words hang. They were asking me to bankroll another of his schemes, as if nothing had changed. I set my mug down, my voice calm. "Do you remember the family party at the steakhouse? You called me an extra dad and said only my brother was worthy of pride. Mom." You nodded along, they flinched eyes darting away. I continued. "Or the barbecue you chose over my award ceremony. I stood on a stage holding a trophy I earned, while you grilled burgers for his charisma." My brother shifted, uncomfortable. Mom reached for my hand, but I pulled back. "You ignored me. My whole life poured everything into his failures. Now you want my money?" Dad's face reddened. "We're family, Amanda. You can't hold grudges." My brother added, "I've got a real plan this time." I almost laughed. His plans had bankrupted them, coffee shops, clothing lines, now this. I'd built my success alone, coding through nights, paying my own way. They'd never cared until they saw me on TV. I shook my head. "I'm not investing. You made your choices. I made mine." Mom's eyes welled up. "We're sorry, Amanda. We didn't know you'd do so much. It was the apology I'd wanted for years, but it felt hollow. Too late." I stood, leaving cash for my coffee. "I wish you well, but I'm done." I walked out, their stunned faces behind me, just like that night at the steakhouse. Only this time, I wasn't running from their words, I was choosing my peace. I drove home to my house, the one I'd bought with my own money. My best friend was waiting ready for our weekly movie night. "How'd it go?" she asked, popping popcorn. I shrugged, smiling. "It's over. I'm free." She grinned, tossing a kernel at me. My life was full, friends who showed up, a team at my startup who respected me, a new car parked in my driveway. I'd traded their approval for my own, and it was worth it. Months later, I heard from a cousin that my parents had moved into a small apartment, scraping by on odd jobs. My brother was working retail, folding clothes for minimum wage at a mall store. His tech store never materialized. They'd lost everything betting on him while dismissing me. I didn't gloat, I just kept moving forward. My app expanded to new states, my team grew, and I started mentoring young coders, sharing the lessons I'd learned the hard way. My best friend and I took that road trip to the Ozarks, laughing under the stars. I bought a painting from a local artist to hang in my office, a reminder of the life I'd built. Every choice was mine now, every success, every moment. I wasn't the extra they'd called me. I was the one who'd made it, not for them, but for me. That was my victory.